Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything in any way. I just like knives. So today, the first knife in my collection tour is going to be this. This is a Benchmade Mini-Griptilian, model 556. There's a simple reason why I'm starting the tour of my collection with this knife. And this knife is special to me. It was my first knife that wasn't an uninformed purchase or an accident. My first researched, thought-through purchase, and my first modern folder. It's the knife that made me realize that handling good knives brought me joy, and that started me off as a collector. Over many years, I accumulated this random collection of knives. A few that I liked, but many that were mistakes, and that really didn't fill a need or bring me joy. Then, several years ago, I made my first conscious decision to buy a well-researched, modern folding knife. I wanted something smaller, more capable, maintainable for light outdoor use, such as motorcycle camping. I did some online research, and in doing that, I found a community of knife forums and knife reviewers and some YouTube publishers that I've come to really appreciate and respect. That research led me to this knife. It seemed like a good thing to try. It was readily available at a decent price. I purchased it from a local outdoor store that has since closed. I remember the array of choices in their knife cabinet was bewildering, but the research I had done helped me to sort through the options and compare them in a sensible way. When I got it home and opened it, I liked it quite a lot. I liked the design concepts, the size, and the shape. But I didn't completely love it yet. First, it was sharp, but not as razor sharp as I would have liked. More on sharpening in a moment. More important, the action was very stiff. It was actually rather difficult to open, and I certainly couldn't see how people did that impressive flick open thing that I see in all the reviews. Then I discovered one of the great features of modern folding knives, which is that they are adjustable. All the old style slip joint knives that I'd acquired until then were not. So I adjusted the main pivot tension and did a little light lubrication, and voila, the action is amazing. Just what I like. I carried it every day for many months, liking it more and more, and this created the addictive urge to acquire more. I kind of thought, ooh, that felt good. I wonder if more would feel better. And thus it begins. So let's do a little tour. This is formally a Mini-Griptilian Model 556. As the name suggests, this is a smaller version of the full-sized Griptilian, which is Model 551, which I don't have, but I'll probably eventually want. That'll be on the upper end of the size I like, but I like this Mini so much that I imagine I would like the parent too. There is another Mini-Griptilian, the Model 555. The difference between the 555 and this, the 556, is in the blade. This knife uses a thumb stud for opening, and it has a drop point blade. The 555 is a modified sheep's foot blade, and it has a taller back with a thumb hole opening, Spyderco style. I didn't know about those two models when I acquired this one. I just went looking for a Mini-Griptilian, but by accident, I made the right choice. I like the thumb stud over the thumb hole for the smoother lines of the top of the blade, and I like drop point blades for their classic look. The marking on the side of the blade says the designer is Mel Pardue, so nicely done, Mr. Pardue. I admire your work. With some of my liner lock and frame lock knives, I'm nervous closing them one-handed, as your finger or thumb is in harm's way as the blade begins to close. I've learned to close them one-handed, but it's scary. And sometimes, when no one is looking, I actually close them two-handed. Don't tell anybody. Not so with an axis lock. With the axis lock, you can initiate closing without your fingers or thumbs being in the path of the blade. If the pivot was looser, the knife would drop close or flick closed at this point. Now, I have it set a little tighter than that and have to close it with light pressure because I don't like a blade moving on its own. But overall, the axis lock feels safer than the liner or frame locks. I'm not going to go through all the usual technical specifications, as there are many knife review sites that already do that, and the information is easy to find on manufacturers' websites, but I will mention just one, which is that the blade is 2.9 inches long, because being under 3 inches is a legal point in some jurisdictions. Not where I live, but in case it's important to you. How about some more practical measurements? Well, open, it's just slightly longer than a ballpoint pen. Closed, it's just slightly smaller than a pocket comb, so it carries well in pockets easily. The weight is a nice compromise. It feels substantial in the hand. It's not a featherweight, but it's light enough to carry effortlessly, and it's never seemed like a burden in my pocket or like it was ruining my pants. The blade shape is a very traditional looking drop point. Benchmade calls it a modified drop point. My understanding is that the modified means that there's a non-standard amount of drop or angle of drop from the straight back to the point, or a non-standard shape and amount of curved belly. It doesn't have a specific meaning as far as I can tell. For me, the shape cuts very nicely, and more importantly, it's not scary looking aggressive. At 13 millimeters, it's a medium thickness blade. It seems to be a little on the thin side, and it slices very nicely without any binding. But I can say I've never been in a situation where the thinness of the blade made me worry for its strength. It does seem to be a good compromise. There's a satin finish on the blade with noticeable milling marks on the upper half. And there's a small sharpening choil, so you can sharpen right to the edge of the blade, to the live edge of the blade, without encountering the shoulder, in theory. In practice, the thumb studs get in the way when sharpening, depending on what sort of an angle and what sharpening system you're using. Your sharpening stone might find the stud is in the way when it's trying to reach down to the inner corner of the blade. It is possible to sharpen around it, but it's very easy to just remove these thumb studs for sharpening and then reinstall them. That's what I do and what I would recommend. Benchmade calls the handle material Noril GTX, which I guess is some kind of nylon. Basically, it's non-exotic, uninspiring, hard black plastic. It has a knurled texture cast into it, and it grips very well. The finger side of the handle has a gentle, non-aggressive, organic shape, and there's a nice indentation for the index finger. It feels very good in the hand. This knife comes with the standard Benchmade pocket clip, which is black steel. The standard clip is a shallow carry, mountable on both sides. See, there's the extra holes. Tip up only. Now, this is not the standard clip. You see it there? This is the optional deep carry clip that Benchmade makes and offers, but doesn't provide as standard. It's available just by calling their customer service department. Unfortunately, it seems to be available only by calling their customer service department. There isn't any way to order one on their website, and using the email contact form simply results in you getting an email telling you to call their customer service department. On the positive side, the person at the customer service department is very pleasant and helpful and was pleased to send me a deep carry clip. These can be free, or they can cost $5, depending on some rules that I didn't fully understand. Mine arrived in a couple of weeks, and it comes with 2 mounting screws. Benchmade recommends putting a little dab of Loctite on the mounting screws, so I did that. With this deep carry clip, it carries very deeply in my pocket, completely out of the way and almost out of sight. There are holes to mount the clip on either side of the body, and since there's also a thumb stud on each side of the blade, the knife is almost completely ambidextrous. I say almost because it does still have a right-handed presentation side. The back side of the body has 2 additional scale mounting holes that aren't on the presentation side. So it's functionally ambidextrous, but it's not presentation ambidextrous. Anyway, I would certainly recommend that you order the deep carry pocket clip for out-of-sight gentleman's carrying. And come on, Benchmade, does anybody actually want the shallow clip? Make the deep carry the default, or at least make it something that you can select when you buy or order on your website. It shouldn't have to be, a secret among knife collectors that if you phone and say this magic password, you'll get a clip. I will point out that there is a lanyard hole, and that the lanyard hole is down the side a bit, not on the end. So if you put a fob on the knife, it does not stick out the end and stick out of your pocket unless you want it to, which is nice. I had a fob on this knife for a while, but I decided I didn't like it and I removed it again. I like the lines of the package without it, and I never felt I needed it to secure my grip. Now, of course, the purpose of a knife is to cut things, but for me, almost equally important, is that it's a fidget spinner. This is a knife to fidget with. A nice, smooth opening action that locks with a satisfying click and is good-looking enough to admire. Nice fidget. Now, I mentioned that this knife was sharp from the factory, but not super sharp. I think we need a scale for describing sharpness, so I've decided on a 4-point scale, which is this: paper sharp, razor sharp, mirror sharp, and bragging sharp. From the factory, this knife was paper sharp. It cut paper easily, and it cut me easily when I was careless. But it wasn't razor sharp, and certainly not mirror sharp. I've sharpened this one, and it is now mirror sharp. I don't know if there's any way to get a camera angle that'll make that work, but the edge is now a nice mirror, and I can see myself clearly in it. I'm not going to claim bragging sharp for this edge yet. I need to get better at my obsessive micro homing. Here's what I mean. Here's a microscope photo of the original factory edge. Remember, this is perfectly usably sharp. It cuts paper, and it cut me. You can still see substantial grooving on the live face from the factory grinding process. You can see the cutting edge is fairly even, but still with a little bit of jaggedness. I would guess this was a bench grinder or sanding belt at about 400 grit. Here's the edge after sharpening with a KME system. Unmagnified in normal room light, this is a good mirror, and it is freaking sharp. Under the microscope, you can still see little micro scratches, so I'm not claiming I've achieved bragging sharp yet. Now, let me absolutely admit that this is strictly a vanity thing. You do not need a knife to be this sharp. In fact, there's pretty good evidence that a knife that is actually used to cut things shouldn't be this sharp. It should retain a slightly toothy edge. This is just fun. This knife is really comfortable in the hand. I've done quite a bit of general cutting, packages and cardboard and string and rope, and I've had no comfort or fatigue issues. I have pretty long fingers, but it fits well. The handle is about 1 centimeter shorter than the width of my hand, so I don't get a complete 4-finger grip, but my pinky wraps around the end of the body, and the curved shape makes that pretty comfortable. The thumb sits very naturally along the jimping on the back of the axis lock, and the pocket clip fits the natural curvature in the palm of my hand, so it isn't uncomfortable. There's quite a large outward curve that seats the index finger and keeps it away from the blade, and there's jimping in there too, so the grip is very secure. It's not really practical or safe to choke up on this blade by moving the index finger out into the choil. The choil just isn't big enough to contain the finger safely, and the shape of the handle tends to push your finger out onto the heel of the live edge, so don't do that. So, as I've said, I have a preference for NTGKs, non-threatening gentleman's knives. How does it do on that front? Well, for the gentleman's part, it's small, light, not too long, and it sits well in the pocket. I'm going to give it a B because it's a little bit thick and chunky compared to a CRKT CEO or Benchmade's Valet. And more important, because the scales are rather plain and uninspiring hard black plastic. It's mechanically beautiful, but it's not visually handsome, like, say, the CRKT CEO with its full carbon fiber scales. For the non-threatening part, I'll give it an A. The opening mechanism is not scary. A thumb stud is much less scary than a flipper, especially if opened slowly. When a flipper is flicked open, it looks like a switchblade and scares non-knife people. With a thumb stud, you can open it so slowly that it's clearly under your control. And in front of very nervous people, you can even close and open it with two hands. Fortunately for me, my old arthritic hands couldn't flick it open even if I wanted to. So I'll say no, the opening mechanism is not scary. Neither is the shape scary. There are nice gentle curves with no threatening, death-suggesting jagged edges. So overall, I'm giving it a B as an NTGK. To get an A, it would need to be slightly slimmer and have more interesting and decorative scales, a nicer material or inlays or colors. I've liked carrying this knife a lot. Part of that is sentimental because it was the start of my modern knife collection. But it really is a nice knife, and now I find myself judging all my other knives by comparing them to how well they sit in the hand compared to this one. It's a useful size, it's non-threatening, it's easy to carry. As an everyday carry knife, I recommend it, and I think you'd like it a lot if your tastes are similar to mine. By the way, I'll just point out that there are no affiliate purchasing links anywhere down there on this page. I'm not making a commission when I say I think you'll like this knife. I'm just telling you what I like and what I think you might like. Well, that is the end of my tour of the Mini-Griptilian. Thanks for visiting. We'll see you again.